he's from.
I just put it, I always forget. I never forget, but just in case.
Yeah,
Wow. Do you go to Mexico often?
I do. Yeah, I love it there.
Oh, it's such an inspirational place.
Mhm.
My interviews are very conversational, so I just like jump right in.
Great, let's do
Uh,
it.
yeah, thinking of Mexico, I mean, a lot of artists are moving there, obviously, just from according to CNN.
Right.
Um, but oh, where do you go for inspiration? Like where is your safe place to just feel revived as an artist?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a specific place. Um, During the pandemic, I went to Mexico for the first time, which is funny because I used to live in California and I never went that far south. And while I was there, I traveled around, but I spent a lot of my time in Mexico City, which is actually where I recorded this project. And so I think, and then I've been going back regularly since. So it's definitely a place where I feel a different type of vibrancy.
Mm.
New York is also a place where I feel a different type of vibrancy. In the past, and I say this only because since the pandemic, I haven't been back, but the west coast of Ireland was always a place that I went to find peace, which was really nice. Like I would go there. I have a friend that lives in a small little village, and I would go spend time out there, and it's just so green and so calm and quiet, and everybody is so friendly and funny. And so that there's a few different places that I've gone that bring me that kind of solace where you really need something different.
Ireland is so gorgeous.
Oh,
All
it's
the places
beautiful.
you mentioned. So it makes me curious. And if you have these places that you go to for inspiration, what do
Mm,
you feel is the thing that kills the inspiration? Because usually we go to these places or
mhm.
because we want to be inspired, meaning that we're not feeling that fire, that spark.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what when you're about to go through a muse low, in
Yeah,
essence?
totally. It is very cyclical for me. And it's very much dependent on routine. So I crave routine for a period of time, and during that routine, I tend to have a specific type of creativity. And then once that routine becomes too frequent, then it dries up and I need to go somewhere else. And that's when bigger form ideas come. So it's more like, you know, and it's really quite specific to my home. Like my home is my safe place, it's my comfort, it's my, my warm blanket. And when I'm here, I'm much more inclined to read, to listen to music, to relax, to sort of, you know, get a sense of peace in my soul. And then that charges me back up. And then it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, now I have something in here that needs to come out. And I can only do so much in here before I'm like, no, this is my space of peace, not my space of creation. And I find that I tend to go somewhere else. This has been my pattern for years now, is that it really, I need to remove myself from my comfort, from my home environment. And that's when things really come to me, I guess. Not that I don't create at home, but it's different. It doesn't have the same, like I'll jot down little ideas and such and such, but I don't have the idea to like full form create. That happens once I've removed myself from my comfort space, from my, cozy.
I two questions to that. The
Mhm.
first is, what do you feel is a book that would be an awesome album? Like if you could like transfer it into a concept album or a concept song.
Ooh, I'm gonna look over at my bookshelf. Uh, well, I mean, one that I think could very easily translate into a book, and also in part because I'm looking at my bookshelf and then looking at this piece that I have on my wall. Just Friends by Patti Smith is one of my favorite books of nonfiction. And, you know, I think the storyline in there, that the movement of finding yourself and sort of exploring and trying new things and really pushing. Have you read this book?
I read parts of it, but I went to her like book opening.
Yeah. It's such a
So,
good book. Like she talks about in this book, there's one, I know this is such a random, we're just going to go this way now, but there's one section in the book where she talks about being inspired by someone. I can't remember who she was inspired now by, but she went to the bathroom and was like looking in the mirror and decided to cut bangs. And so she did it, and she just cut these bangs, and I was like, oh man. And she, you know, she felt so liberated by this. And so one day I was like, I want to do the same. And so I went into the bathroom and I cut bangs. And in spite of what you see right now, I have very curly hair.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
did this when I had very curly hair. And I went in and I did and I don't know why I hadn't learned this lesson, because my mother did this to me when I was young. She took my hair and because I wanted bangs, and she pulled it down like this and went choop, 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 just like you would if you had straight hair, except
yeah,
for it was curly. And so it then went ping, and my
yeah,
bangs were like up here, and they're also curly. So this time when I was inspired by the legend, Patti Smith, I was like, doop, 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 and I cut my bangs and they were like this.
oh, oh, I knew it was gonna go wrong because like I just think it's like the human plight of like we copy others. And
Yes.
like, but it's somehow like the paste, it's like copy pasting, but like somehow like a word got cut out,
You
or
know,
you're just
my
like,
friend, my
"Hmm,
friend back in Winnipeg, her daughter is 4 years old, and she's really taken to scissors and her hair recently.
uh,
So now she has like this really wonderful bang haircut that's kind of like way up here, but then in some pieces it's kind of like, and it sort of feathers down into this hilarious mullet. And that's all I can say is how I felt in that moment where I cut the bangs, and I'm like, huh, this isn't quite what I had envisioned.
I used to shave my face as a child. Like, you know how like you watch men shave their beard? I used to do that and I would get stubbles. But like I would like get all these little baby cuts and stuff. My
God.
grandmother had a heart attack because of that. Like she was like, "What? What's happening?" And because I would come out of the bathroom like, yeah, just had to make sure the beard
Fresh
doesn't
shave.
grow back.
I did the same with my because I lived with my grandfather for quite some time. And so he had like a shave kit with like the brush that you go like this, you know, like
Yeah.
to get everything frothy. And so I would just play along, like play around. I never shaved my face, but
Glad I was at the only extreme. I'm glad.
no, 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 no. But I was going like this, and I went zoop and shaved off a chunk of my eyebrow. Thank God this was during the Vanilla Ice period of life, where it was like the doop 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 was sort of like in style, but not for 10-year-old girls. It wasn't. So I came out of the bathroom and I was like crying hysterically, and my auntie lived there, and she, you know, like wore a lot of makeup. So she like, you know, fixed me up with some eyeshadow, and I was like, okay, great. No one will know. But of course you're 10 years old. So you're like constantly wiping it off. So by
Yeah.
the time I got to school, everyone was like, what did you do to your face? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I shaved it.
Yeah. I shaved it. I own it and deal with it. I'm fashion forward. But thinking of your new music and the idea of comfort. So if you could describe your new music as a comfort place, what would
Mhm.
it be like?
Well, you know, the comfort in this project is that I finally have written, or finally is maybe the wrong word, but I've created this project entirely from my personal experiences of, you know, love, heartache, relationships, both on friendship and family and community levels, and all of these different elements of, you know, this part of my soul. that I haven't really touched on before. A lot of my prior work was very focused on community element and standing up for injustices that I was observing in my community and of my community. And so I didn't quite give myself a lot of space to be vulnerable in my own sentiment of those personal relationships, because I felt very inspired to stand up for things that I believed in, right? And so this has been a big shift, because it's now me talking from a very vulnerable and personal side. Not that I wasn't vulnerable in those other conversations, but when it's a collective, like when I'm standing for something in terms of a collective unity, I feel that strength in numbers, right? So the vulnerability is absolutely there, but it's a different type of vulnerability. This one is like, here's my direct heartache regarding something that nobody else, or like one other person, or the number of involvement is quite small. And so it's a different type of vulnerability. So this project is definitely that. It's a space of a freedom of allowing myself to express pieces of me that I didn't feel confident expressing before, as somebody who was more politically charged or social justice motivated. There's not as much space in there to then, write a love song about, like getting divorced. The two are very different streams, right? So,
or maybe there's a bridge, like, the society is breaking apart, like us.
yeah. I am not, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that from where I was standing as I was creating these projects, they came from a very different place of comfort on the inside and what I was prepared to share. And now it's like, oh, hey, I've got to a place where it's like, okay, I'm prepared to allow people into my personal in a very different way, in a very new way that I haven't done before.
It's called, I'm a lame person in that I invent words. I'm like vulnerable unity instead of vulnerability, vulnerable unity.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah, because I understand what you mean. I think that it's weird. Like collectives are weird, especially like, mass groups of people. You can feel really united with them, but kind of like a another speck on the wall, a little. And it's very, it could be weird to feel whether you should have a voice, whether you're safe enough to have a voice, how much should your voice be heard, versus in a relationship, you could still have those same feelings. But I think the expectation is that if it's love, those feelings disappear. Like it's just always honest. It's just always.
Yeah, there's no room to, or there's less, I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to find it's almost like when it's something that's more one-on-one, it's a direct back and forth. So the ebb and flow between the two is much faster.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that I feel this is where the question mark comes in. I think the expectation is that you should be honest with somebody, or that you can be 100% honest with somebody, because sometimes you have to protect people's feelings. Sometimes you have to process your own, which I think
and I think that honesty piece is also, turn the finger around and be like, how honest am I being with myself? How free am I being with myself? How vulnerable am I being with myself? And that is what this piece or this project really came down to, was turning that finger around and being like, okay, what are you actually feeling? Not with regards to concern of the greater good, but like you as an individual, what are you feeling right now? And that's where I went with it.
Yeah, I feel that. So was there, you're talking about vulnerability, you're talking about this kind of, moving away a little bit from speaking for collectives, or thinking about collectives and just thinking about your own individual journey, was
Mhm.
a realization kind of like who you are as an individual versus as a collective? Like, were there parts of you you didn't know you had?
No, it was more that there were parts of me I didn't feel confident or safe in revealing, right? So, as an example, as an artist who has, like I said, has been predominantly focused on social justice related conversations where I'm actively standing up and defending community, women in my community, women in general, but specifically women within my community. It's like I feel like I felt like I had to be very much in this lane of strength, determination. I had to be very well poised and put together in order to be heard and in order to be taken seriously, and these sorts of things. And in that feeling, I did not feel like I had enough space to be vulnerable or romantic or sensual or sexual or feminine, or it was almost like these different side pieces of me. This part is still very much me, but it didn't give room for this other part of me inside, right? Like I didn't feel, I'm not saying that anybody else did that, I didn't feel like I could be both outwardly. I felt like if I wanted to be taken seriously for the serious things that I was addressing, that I couldn't then just be like, oh, and talk about my sensuality or sexuality or anything like this.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, I've taken that finger back and been like, okay, well, what's the part that, this piece of me has felt very tapered down. So I'm ready to let that out.
I get it. I think when you're speaking for others, you have to be strong, whereas sensuality and sexuality can feel too personal.
Too
And
personal. And I feel like as as a female, it's hard to get people to listen, right? It's hard to get people to listen from a um there's like this really fine line all the time where I think it's easy for us to be marked as, to this, to that,
yes,
blah, 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 all of these things to silence us so that we don't stand up, so that we don't speak up, because that, like we're pushed back down so quickly. And so the thing that made me feel like I had to stay focused on that in that area was because I'm like, well, if I want like these messages that I feel are important to share, I don't want to detract from them. I want to stay focused in them. And so I had to just be like blinders on. This is what I can talk about. This is how I can present myself in order to be heard and in order to be seen, in order to get those messages out, right? And then in order to share this other side of me, I feel like, okay, well, a shift had to take place, but also time had to take place. And there were all of these elements that I felt needed to happen in order for me to now present that without it detracting from my ability to also stand up in things that I still feel are extremely important to talk about and so on. So it took me time to feel like I could get to a place where
yeah.
I could then sort of balance both, essentially, because of that, because I do just feel like we are we're heard differently.
Do you think that then music becomes a really, I would say the music then pushes a line and blurs a line so that it doesn't feel like it's there?
Yeah.
Seems like that's what happened in your music, and I think that's what happens in music in general. It kind of makes the line a little bit blurry and invisible, so you feel a little bit safer at cross
Mm.
and kind of analyzing why it's there. Is it there
Mhm.
because of society? Is it there because of me? Can I be the person that tells both to move away?
Well, and art in general, right? Like art, there's room to push boundaries and there's room to move lines around, and not everybody's going to love what you do, and like accepting in that as well. That was a big piece for me, was this acceptance of not everybody's going to love what I have to say, and not everybody's going to love how I present my art or my vision. And I had to learn how to be, and it's definitely still a part of my learning journey, how to be comfortable with that accepting the fact that I'm going to present art in the way that I feel it on the inside, and the way that it comes out, and I can um speak my truth in the best way that I know how. And some people will like it and some people won't, but my sentiment remains in trying to walk in this world with love and kindness. And if that's the foundation of how I share the messages, then that's all I can rely on, right?
So
So
what do
music, art, being able to you know fan those lines out, push those boundaries a bit in order to get people talking, because that's the whole point, is to get people to talk. We don't want everybody to love everything that we do, because then there's no conversation anymore.
I agree. I agree. I think that it's impossible to get everyone to
Oh
love
yeah.
you. I think that best you can love your work, or you can feel like this is something that I want people to love. The right
Mm-hmm.
people will find it. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the best thing that I think I can create as a creative. Just
Mm-hmm.
like something that I feel will bridge us together.
Yeah. I
But
also feel like there's a shelf life to how much I love my art as well.
oh,
It's like you create something and you're like, okay, great, and I'm proud, I'm ready, this is done, and then you put it over here, and then you move on as the artist, and then by the time this starts getting disseminated to people, you're like, oh man, like I'm already 2 projects past that now, and now I have to go back into this state of mind, but I don't really feel in that state of mind. And it's interesting as the creator, where it's like the like flipping back into the sentiment of that piece.
I have to check myself because I think that sometimes when I make songs, especially like you always fall in love with the new ones because they're the new you and they're the ones that you swear you've grown so much that they're the best.
Exactly. Yeah.
You've grown as a producer, you've grown as a writer, you've grown as a singer, you've grown as a person. So they're gonna be hits compared
Mm-hmm.
to your old ones. So I do have to check myself, but I think as somebody who is learning and is growing, it's right to think that they are better in some way.
Yeah.
I
Well, it's
think,
an evolution, right?
yeah,
Like we're constantly evolving. Of course, things are going to improve. I mean, in the eye of the beholder, if you're putting something forward, presumably it's because you think it's ready,
yeah,
right? Whether or not you sit in that state for how long, that's a whole other conversation. But at the time that you're like, okay, this is now a finished thing.
yeah,
And then you move on. And then you've
yeah.
got to keep going and keep creating and keep packaging it up into the finished thing and moving on.
Well, I did want to ask you, so going off that concept of love and truth, what is a truth about love that you feel your new work claims?
A truth about love that my new work claims. Um, the conversations tend to float in the realm of how I feel, right? What the experience was like for me. So in the stories of love, of hurt, of all of these pieces, they're self-reflective. And that's what I think the lesson of this project, this was a very big release for me, was to create and share based on how it felt for me, without without so much time in the external, like how it was received or how the other experience was or whatever it might be. It was just like, this is my experience, this is what was happening. And so the lesson there was of love was, you know, what is that response in me? How do I move through it? How do I open myself to it? How was I closing myself to it? What, you know, like all of that movement in the sentiment. I don't know if that answers the question specifically, but
I think what it does is that it kind of makes, I think the truth that you're claiming is that love is, you go through relationships from your perspective.
yeah. And you can think, you know, like you participate with the other person. It's not one-sided in that sense, but you only know what you feel, right? Like truly, right? You can have conversations, you can talk about it, you can all of those things, but you don't actually know what somebody else has, what their physical sensation is, what the emotional sensation, what the mental sensation, like all of those pieces are yours and yours alone. And so the truth in it for me is that we only ever really know what we feel.
Yeah. I think I think that 100% is a truth. It's just like one of those that like people, I don't know. I don't know if they have a hesitance to admit, but I think that we like to think we know what the other intends. We are intuitive people. So I
Yeah.
think there is fairness to say that your intuition knows. But when you go through a relationship, you go through life just as you.
Well, this is it.
Yeah.
And our understanding of what the other is thinking, feeling, saying, all of those pieces, again, it's like we can only, intuition, of course, intuition is you know, has been a guiding force in my entire life. But again, you still, it's not a hard science, right? Like it's not, in the sense that you still only really know, and even still, do you even really, oh my gosh, this is getting really meta. Do we even really know what we feel on the inside? Because that's always changing, and
Well,
who knows?
I think that I'm very much, I believe in intuition, but at the same time, I also know that my intuition is mute if I'm not in a good place with myself.
Well, exactly, because it can
So
be,
yeah,
um,
you could really think worry is just your intuition telling you something. And it's like, no, you're just being neurotic again.
mhm,
Yeah.
exactly. Or if we've been, you know, if the we've been programmed by prior experiences that we haven't unlearned yet, then we intuitively, you know, protect ourselves in order to not repeat that, if we haven't done enough work to unlearn the, you know, like the negative traits or the negative qualities or something, like the patterns. That's the word that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's it. I completely 100% agree.
Yeah.
And then you bring all that little mixed bag into relationships, and it's just like, how are we all even together?
Are we all even together?
Are we all even together? How are we all even alive? It's so
Oh boy.
but can you, I always end my interviews with like a oracle pull,
Okay.
but I left my oracle, so let me just go grab them real quick. And
Perfect.
they're all for like positivity, so do not worry, nothing
I am
dark.
not. This sounds awesome.
Just wait. Mm. Sorry, if you hear like little gruffles, my dog is just like,
Oh, hi, honey.
he's a typical Chihuahua, thinks he has to protect the place from no one because no one but me is here. So he
I
like
have two
growls.
dogs as well.
He growls at like the window. One thing I did notice, I have to say, I love like what people are attracted to in terms of art, because I'm
Mhm.
like, the cloud is choking him, the leaf is crying from her. It's kind of like, and then you mentioned how like places like Ireland and Mexico City, like their very nature can be really comforting. So I'm like, it makes sense via your art.
Well, and you can't see it in here, but this backdrop behind all of these flowers is a starry night sky. And
Oh,
she's in this field, like further on this side with these flowers, night sky behind her. Then if you look here, his chest is the starry night sky. This is a moon. And then this is this field. So I got this piece first, and this one came like some months later, and it came at a time that I met somebody very important in my life. And so I felt very much like this was me, and I was, here with this lonely tear in this field and the sky behind me and sort of like uncertain. And then I discovered this, and so I feel like she's down here with this being that's above, providing that comfort from afar kind of thing. So this is why they stay
but they're
together.
in love.
They're
Yeah,
in love.
they're in love. Like her sky is his heart.
Ex-
I love that. Okay, so you got Big Bold Vision and Dream a Little Dream upside down. So
What was
basically
the first one?
Big Bold Vision
Bold
and Dream
Vision.
a Little Dream, and they have very similar messages in that Big Bold Vision is about like dreaming bigger than what you dream. Like if you feel that you are ambitious, be more. And
Okay.
Dream a Little Dream is about kind of perfecting that imagination, romanticizing it. And I was upside down, and something made me feel like that should be that way, because usually when it's upside down, it means reverse. So I think what this is trying to say in terms of like coming out together is that there's like a little bit of a blockage in terms of imagination, like not dreaming enough or dreaming bigger, maybe not feeling connected in terms of your dreams in terms of career or love or life, but it's really saying like go bigger, be even more ambitious, be even more imaginative. Don't lose. And then your next two cards were inner trust and faith in the process, and it kind of makes sense that these four would come out together, because two came out and two came out. And faith in the process and inner trust are kind of in the titles. And if you see, she's like just kneeling, not even realizing there's a bird on her back, trying to maybe chirping to her some messages, because it's kind of saying like belief and faith in yourself and faith in the universe are going to help you romanticize your dreams
Right.
and make them even bigger. And if that is feeling blocked, if you're not dreaming enough or dreaming bigger, it's because you're not trusting enough yourself or the universe. So both of them are kind of coming together to say it's time to heal that lack of faith, those blockages, because you can really go bigger. You can do whatever you want in your life. You're just not feeling it. You're not feeling it.
ISKWE. This is the truth. It's starting to hilarious. I could talk about this for the next 5 hours. I pulled some tarot cards recently, like the other week, and one fell out as I was shuffling, fell into my lap, put it down, and it was the stars upside down, stars reversed. And again, it was this, this like, I've lost faith in sort of the greater message or my greater purpose. And funnily enough, I had been having an argument with the universe over the last little while, and we've just come out of this fight, so we're making amends right now.
Well, I mean, the star is about being seen. And when it comes in reverse, it also means that basically you're hiding.
Mhm.
The last oracle that I pulled for you was the word wants to be written. And that is all about taking everything that it's inside of you and creating something with it. There's something inside of you that wants to be said, that wants to be made into a project, into a path, into
Sure
a
does.
relationship. And you're just like holding it in, not realizing that the sheer desire of it means that it's meant to be.
Right.
It's kind of like when you want something, it's like the universe telling you that what you want wants you back.
Hmm.
Like you don't just want something to want something. Going back to that concept of intuition, there is guidance.
Right.
There is inner guidance. So yeah. Now
Right
my
on.
dog is gonna eat the oracles, so let me put them away. But yeah, so I think that's your ultimate message. Like there has to be some healing and
Mhm,
trust in yourself again because you're hiding.
mhm. Oof. Oof. All
Yay.
right. Well, interview turned therapy session. Thank you.
Yay. Well, that's why I love them because they're always positive, but they're true. And
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
never about getting anywhere but where you want.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want where you want to go, wants you to get there. And it's like just trust and show yourself. Yay. So thank you for this interview. This was lovely. And I hope you have a great day. I love your art.
Wonderful. You as well. This was fantastic. Best interview I've ever had. I really enjoyed this.
Yay. Yay. Good, good, good.
Awesome.
And have a nice day.
You too. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely
Bye.
meeting you all.